Hey, welcome. Today, we're diving into a really different way of looking at the creation story. It's a view that suggests Earth's real origin story is way more cosmic and a whole lot older than the one most of us grew up with. Let's jump in.
We all know the story of the 7 days of creation, right? It's one of the most famous stories ever. But what if that story isn't actually the beginning? What if it's picking up the action after all the heavy lifting was already done?
And the whole thing starts with a little surprise, kind of hidden in plain sight, right inside the scriptures that describe the physical creation of the world. Okay, so what's so wild about this quote from Moses chapter 3 is the timing. It's describing the planet right before life shows up. But notice what it doesn't talk about. It doesn't mention the planet itself being formed. The Earth is already here, fully built, but totally empty. Think about what that implies. It means the story we know skips over this massive, long period of geological prep work. I mean, Adam and Eve didn't show up on a hot globe of lava rock, right? According to this view, they came to an Earth that was already loaded with all the stuff we need, like oil and minerals. So the real question is, where's the story of that creation? Well, even though the story in Moses is quiet about this early phase, the source we're looking at says other prophets have given us some pretty amazing clues. Specifically, this view points us to chapters 4 and 5 in the book of Abraham. This text, it says, describes that exact preparation phase, the careful engineering of the physical Earth, before life as we know it ever arrived. And this is where the story goes from being about geology to being about, well, cosmology. The revelations given to Abraham from this perspective don't just tell us how the Earth was made ready, but also where. And this question gets to the heart of a really mind-bending idea. The concept here is that before the fall of Adam, the Earth wasn't just in a different spiritual state, it was literally in a different place, running on a totally different cosmic clock. This line from Abraham chapter 5 is the key. It's suggesting that our planet's early days were tied not to our sun, but to a completely different star system, one that revolved around a great governing star called Kolob. Now just stop and think about that for a second. If one day up there is 1,000 of our years down here, then those 6 days of creation suddenly look very, very different, don't they? It paints a picture of our planet having its early history in a totally different part of the universe. And listen, this isn't just someone's new interpretation of ancient texts. The source points out that modern leaders, people like John Taylor and Brigham Young, taught this same idea, that the Earth was first organized near Kolob and then later fell to its current spot in our solar system. Okay, so if the Earth was prepared in one place and then moved, how did life even get here? And this leads to what might be the most startling idea in this whole framework.
And there it is, stated as plainly as can be. This source is citing Brigham Young, who taught that life didn't just pop into existence here on Earth. No, it was transplanted. The parent stock for all the plants and animals was brought here from older, already populated worlds.
So how in the world would that even work? Well, the process is laid out like this. First, you get a new planet ready, that's the early Earth. Then you select your best parent stock from an existing world. Step 3 is to quicken that life for the journey, and finally, you transplant it to its new home. So, what is this quickening? Well, this is the mechanism that makes it all possible. It's described as a divine process, almost like a scientific one, that changes a living thing so it can survive space travel without needing a spaceship that feels like Earth. The being itself is basically adapted for the trip. Now, this might sound pretty out there, but the source says there are actually precedents for this in the scriptures. This process, also called translation, is mentioned with Enoch's entire city, the people of Melchizedek, John the Beloved, and the 3 Nephites. All of them are examples of beings taken from Earth without going through a normal death. All right, this whole framework of seeding planets with life leads to its most important question: the origin of humans. This is really the big one, isn't it? If plants and animals were brought from another world, what about Adam? Was he also brought here, or was his creation totally different? Well, according to this view, that famous phrase, dust of the earth, has been completely misunderstood. It points to this verse in Moses chapter 6 and presents it as a kind of technical definition. Being made from the dust of the earth isn't about being sculpted from mud. It's a description of a physical birth. So what this means in this interpretation is that Adam's body was made the same way every single human body is made, through birth to mortal parents. The whole idea of a man being created spontaneously from clay is viewed here as more of a medieval concept, something not actually supported by the text itself.
So let's just put this side by side to make it super clear. On the left, you've got the conventional theories, and on the right, you've got the perspective from our source. Adam was born of mortal parents, transplanted from another world, and was the first flesh specifically here on this earth.
And this quote is what they use to really lock in that final point. The source puts a huge emphasis on the wording first flesh upon the earth. This is taken to mean he couldn't have evolved from earlier life on this planet and that there weren't any pre-Adamic people here. His story, our story, begins right there in the Garden of Eden. Ultimately, the source acknowledges that, yeah, these are profound ideas, and they definitely leave us with a lot of questions. It kind of wraps up by pointing to this passage from Doctrine and Covenants, section 101, which promises that one day, everything will be made clear. The full hidden history of our world will finally be laid out for us. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This framework presents a story where principles that sound like science fiction, like interplanetary travel and planetary seeding, are done through divine power. It really challenges us to think about the relationship between what we can figure out with research and what might be understood through faith. Where does one end and the other begin?